All right, we're going to continue looking at solving two-step equations. Let's do a quick review of our steps. Do not need to write these down. We're simplifying each side, remembering our goal to get the variable by itself. Then we undo our addition, undo our multiplication, and check our answer. So let's jump right in. Let's do a quick solving equation review just to get you warmed up. Remember, simplifying each side includes changing our subtraction here to addition. Remember, our first term does not change. Subtraction becomes addition, and the next number becomes the opposite. Then we remember, we want to isolate the variable. I want this x to end up by itself, right? Equals some number. So to get our x isolated, let's try that again. To get our x isolated, the first thing we do is undo the addition. I need this number right here to become 0 because 4x plus 0 equals 4x. So in order to make negative 10 0, I add the opposite. A number plus its opposite equals 0. On the left-hand side, I have my 4x that nothing happened to. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. Negative 16 plus 10 is negative 6. Remember, different signs, find the difference. The difference between 16 and 10 is 6. I have more negatives, so it's negative 6. Now we undo multiplication. If I can make this 4 become a 1, 1x is just x. When we're undoing multiplication, we can multiply each side of the equation by the reciprocal of that coefficient. So when I multiply across, I get negative 6 over 4. On the left side, my numbers are canceling. Remember, negative times a positive is negative. Now let's simplify. And I get x equals negative 3 over 2. Remember, it's okay to get a fraction. Nothing wrong with that. All right. And then the checking your answer. Again, that's something that I suggest you do, but it's up to you. Okay. What if? Two things are going to happen in our notes today. The first, what if the equation has the variable being subtracted? Here's what that means. This is the type of equation I'm talking about. Okay. So copy this question down and this example. Now this is what I was talking about. If you're 7th grade or 6th grade or any other teacher said, well, if you have an addition problem, undo it with subtraction. If you have subtraction, undo it with addition. This is the time where that rule breaks down. Don't copy this down, just watch this part. But if you tell yourself, okay, well, I see subtraction, so that means I add 3 to both sides. I want you to really think about what happened. 3 plus 3 is 6. Did I change anything? Adding 3 to both sides got me nowhere. I mean, I can do it. I could add 1 billion to both sides if I want, but it's not going to get me to my goal, which is to get the x by itself. This is bad. That's not good. Okay. It's not how we solve these. I'll show you how we'll solve those in just a few minutes. Okay. The second thing we're going to look at is what happens when the constant on both sides of the equation is eliminated. It's okay if it is. And I'll show you how we handle that in just a little bit. right, let's take a look at an example. Here's an example of that first what if. What if I'm subtracting my variable? It's okay, no stress. We're still going to solve everything like we have been. First thing is to simplify each side, doing our add the opposite. My number stays the same. Subtraction becomes addition. Here's where people start getting a little bit nervous, like, well, what happens to my x? Well, think about this. If it was negative 2 minus 2x, when we add the opposite, you would make it negative 2x, right? 2x becomes negative 2x. Nothing changes here. If you need to look at this as 1x, do it. Eventually you're going to have to, so you might as well do it now. Okay, remember there's a coefficient here, it's a 1. You just can't see it until you need it. You may never need it, but it's there if you do. Okay, so when we're simplifying, you may need to pull out that coefficient of 1 so that you can simplify everything correctly. So, nothing left to simplify. Remember our goal. Our goal is x equals some number. So the first thing we do is undo our addition. Get rid of our number being added. It's a negative 2. So we're going to add 2 to both sides. I'm left with negative 1x equals 20. Again, nothing crazy is happening here. But we have, you have some options, but if we just think about what we're used to doing, this negative 1 needs to become positive 1. So if I multiply by the reciprocal on both sides, negative times a negative is positive. All my numbers cancel, and I'm left with x. When I multiply across, I'm left with negative 20. And that's my answer. Now, I want you to look at something on a side note, though. I'm going to rewind up to this point. I had negative 1x equals 20, and my final answer became x equals negative 20. I want you to just take a look for a second and see if you can see a pattern that happened. Do you see it? If you don't, that's okay. We'll see if you can see the pattern on the next one. Let's look at example 2. Now I know my x is on the right, but that's okay, nothing changes. Still going to simplify. Keep the first number the same. Subtraction becomes addition. Remember, we have a little 1 here. So when I change subtraction to addition, I end up with negative 1x. Remember, our goal is to have x, so we want to undo addition first. Add a negative 3 to both sides, because 3 plus negative 3 is 0. I get negative 25, negative 22 plus negative 3, negative 25, equals negative 1x. Now to undo multiplication, we're going to multiply by each side by the reciprocal of this coefficient, which would be negative 1 over 1. Negative 1 times negative 25 is positive 25. All my numbers on the right cancel, and I'm left with x. Now again, let's look at what happened here. I had negative 25 equals negative 1x, and my answer became 25 equals x. What's the opposite of negative x? The opposite of negative x is positive x, isn't it? What's the opposite of negative 25? Positive 25. That's interesting. Let's look at our last example really quick. What's the opposite of negative 1x? X. What's the opposite of 20? Negative 20. You could actually avoid this step if you would like, because you could look at this and say, well, if I get the opposite of the left side and the opposite of the right side, I'm following the equation rules. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So if I find the opposite of the left and the opposite of the right, I'm completely within the rules of equations. Just something to think about. We'll look at some more examples in a little bit. All right, let's take a look at this one. Now I have no subtraction, so we're switching gears a little bit. This is a second scenario. Two-step equations, simplify both sides. Remember, our goal is to find x, to isolate x. So we undo addition first. Positive 16 and negative 16. I have 5x on the left. My 16s cancel. But if you look on the right-hand side, 16 and negative 16 is also 0. Your first instinct may be that something is wrong. But just double check what you did. And if what you have is correct and it truly adds up to 0, keep going. It's okay. I did the right thing. I added negative 16 to both sides, and 16 plus negative 16 is 0. We're just going to keep going with it. We undo multiplication by taking this coefficient, making it a fraction, and then multiplying each side by the reciprocal. On the left, my numbers cancel, and I have x. On the right, what's 0 times anything? 0. Now, this may be a case where you definitely want to check just to be sure, because it's not something you usually see. But do know that x can be 0. There's no rule that it can't be. It's just that a lot of times you don't see it. Follow the order of operations. I get 0 plus 16 does equal 16, so I'm okay. Oops. All right, we're going to do a little guided practice. I want you to try this problem on your own. Hit pause. Then I want you to check your work against my work. Okay, you should have gotten x equals negative 16. So just take a second and look through what I did. Added the opposite. Got 12 equals negative 4 plus negative 1x. Add 4 to both sides. Find the opposite of the left and the right, and you get x equals negative 16. Here's the next guided practice. Hit pause, and then see if you get the same answer I do. All right, so we did our additive inverse to get rid of our subtraction. 3x plus negative 10 equals negative 10. Undo addition by adding 10 to both sides. You get 3x equals 0. Undo multiplication. Multiply each side by your reciprocal. You end up with x equals 0. And that's it.